All right, example 1.19. The basic idea with this problem is, as I've mentioned in some previous examples, there's two things that you have to worry about at this point in your class when you're talking about the domain of a function. Don't divide by 0, and don't take the square root, or really any even root, so the 4th root, the 6th root, etc., of a negative number. So in this one, I don't have a denominator here. There's nothing that'll make me divide by 0, so I can ignore that rule. But the rule that will come into play is the square root one. I have to make sure that I do not take the square root of a negative number. So to figure out the domain, I could say this thing that's underneath the square root sign, in other words, the radicand here, has to be either greater than 0 or equal to 0. Right? In other words, not negative, not negative, you could write mathematically like this, I suppose. And so how do you solve this for x? Well, the easiest thing I think would just be to add x to both sides of the equation. But most people, for whatever reason, prefer to keep their variable over on the left-hand side, so you can subtract 7 from both sides of the equation. But you didn't isolate the x, you isolated negative x. So you multiply both sides of the equation by -1, and maybe you think it's x is greater than or equal to 7. In fact, you're wrong. It's x is less than or equal to 7. The one thing you have to remember when you're solving with inequalities is that anytime you multiply both sides of the equation by a negative number or divide both sides of the equation by a negative number, you flip the inequality. So when I decided going from this line to this line to multiply both sides by -1, I had to flip this inequality here. So my answer is all values of x that are less than or equal to 7. You can check that. If I threw 7 in, 7 minus 7 is 0, and the square root of 0, that's fine, that's defined, it's just 0. If I threw, I don't know, what's another number that's less than or equal to 7? 6 maybe? 7 minus 6 is 1, and the square root of 1, that's totally fine. So this is my domain right here. How do you write that in interval and set builder notation? I'm going to start by drawing the picture just because that's what I've been doing. I want to include 7 because it's less than or equal to 7. And then I also want to include everything that is less than 7. So really I'm talking about that set. And how do you write that set? Well, in interval notation you say it's everything from -infinity up to +7. And you do want to include +7, which is why this bracket is right here. You always put parentheses on infinities and negative infinities, but I want the bracket when I do want to include a value. And that would be the answer in interval notation. If you really wanted it in set builder notation, you could say it's the set of all x such that x is either less than or equal to 7, which is essentially, it's exactly what I have written over here in kind of more of a, I don't know, inequality notation, I suppose. Either of these would work as an answer as they talk you through here. Now you've seen a video too.